Jaya Ram Madhova Kunjali Hare Jaya Ram Madhova Kunjali Hare Gopijana Balaba Kiridamura Gopijana Balaba Kiridamura Srimad, His Divine Grace Abhaya Chananad Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada, ISKCON, Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai, Say Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Ravanachananda Shidvaita Gadadha Shivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gaur Sayam Kun Radha Gunda Giri Govardhan ki jai, Vrindavan ki jai, Churanam ki jai, Jagannath Swami ki jai, Gurumai ki jai, Shrimad Devi ki jai, Suveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Hari Hari. All glories to the assembled. All glories the assembled. All glories the assembled. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, second canto, chapter 3, text 12. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Jnanam
Yat
Apratinivritta Gunarme Chakram Atma Prasada Uta Guneshu Asangaha Aivaya Samata Patas Su Ata Bhakti Yoga Ko Nirvritto Bodhi Katasu Ratim Na Kuryat Jnanam Yada Prapatini Vrata Gunarmi Chakram Atma Prasada Utayatra Guneshva Sangha Kaivalya Samatapatastvi Atvatta Bhakti Yoga O Nirvito Harikatasu Ratinna Kurya Jnanam Yada Prativritta Gunarmi Chakram Atma Prasada Utayatra Guneshva Sangha Kaivalya Sammatapatastvata Bhakti Yoga O Nirvito Harikatasu Ratim Kurya Jnanam Yat Apratinivritta Gunarmi Chakram Atma Prasada Utayatra Guneshva Sangha Kaivalya Sammatapatastvata Bhakti Yoga O Nirvito Harikatasu Ratinna Kuryat
Jnanam Yada Prativritta Gunarmi Chakram Atma Prasada Utayatra Guneshva Sangha Aivaya Samata Katastvata samatha bhakti yoga.
Kaivalya samatha bhakti yoga.
Ko nirvito harikatha suratim nakurya.
Ko nirvito harikatha suratim nakurya.
Yanam yat apratati vittis flitting gunormi chakram.
Yanam yat gunormi chakram.
Atma prasada utayatra guneshu sangaha.
Atma prasada utayatra guneshu sangaha.
Kaivalya samatta patas tuata bhakti yoga.
Kaivalya samatha patas tuata bhakti yoga.
Ko nirvito harikata suritamna kuryat.
Ko nirvito harikatha suratim nakurya.
Jnanam yara priti nivrita gunormi chakra.
Jnanam yara priti nivrita gunormi chakra.
Atma prasada yuta yatra guneshva sangaha.
Atma prasada yuta yatra guneshva sangaha.
Kaivalya samatha patasvata bhakti yoga.
Kaivalya samatha bhakti yoga.
Ko nivritito hari katha suratim nakurya.
Ko nirvito harikatha suratim nakurya.
Janam yara pitin navita gunormi chakram.
Jnanam yara priti nivrita gunormi chakram.
Atma prasada uta yatra gunasva sangaha.
Atma prasada uta yatra guneshva sangaha.
Kaivalya samatha patastva ata bhakti yoga.
Kaivalya samatha patasva bhakti yoga.
Ko nirvito harikatha suratim nakunyat.
Ko nirvito harikatha suratim nakurya.
Ladies.
Jnanam yat aparata nivritta gunormi chakram.
Jnanam yara priti nivrita gunormi chakram.
Atma prasada utayatra guneshva sangha.
Atma prasada uta yatra guneshva sangaha.
Kaivalya samatha patastu artha bhakti yoga.
Kaivalya samatha patasva bhakti yoga.
Ko nirvirito harikatha suratim nakuryat.
Ko nirvito harikatha suratim nakurya.
Yanam yara prati nivrita gunormi chakram.
Jnanam yara priti nivrita gunormi chakram.
Atma prasada utayatra guneshva sangaha.
Atma prasada uta yatra guneshva sangaha.
Kaivalya samatha patastvata bhakti yoga.
Kaivalya samatha patasva bhakti yoga.
Ko nirvito harikatha suratim nakurya.
Ko nirvito harikatha suratim nakurya.
Okay. Jnanam.
Jnanam.
Knowledge.
Knowledge.
Yat.
Yat.
That which.
That which.
Up to the limit of.
Up to the limit of.
Pratinivrita.
Pratinivrita.
Completely withdrawn.
Completely withdrawn.
Guna urmi.
Guna
The
urmi.
waves of the material modes.
The waves of the material modes.
Chakram.
Chakram.
Whirlpool.
Whirlpool.
Atma prasada.
Atma prasada.
Self-satisfaction.
Self-satisfaction.
Uta.
Uta.
Moreover.
Moreover.
Yatra.
Yatra.
Where there is.
Where there is.
Guneshu.
Guneshu.
In the modes of nature.
In the modes of nature.
Sangaha.
Sangaha.
No attachment.
No attachment.
Kaivalya.
Kaivalya.
Transcendental.
Transcendental.
Samatha.
Samatha.
Approved.
Approve.
Pataha, path,
Path.
to,
But.
Ata, therefore, Bhakti Yoga,
Bhakti Yoga.
devotional service,
Devotional service.
Kaha,
Who.
Nirvitaha,
Nirvitaha.
absorbed in,
Absorbed in.
Harikatasu,
Harikatasu.
in the transcendental topics of the Lord,
In the transcendental topics of the Lord.
Ratim,
Ratim.
attraction,
Attraction.
Na, shall not,
Shall not.
Kuryat,
Kuryat.
do. Translation: transcendental knowledge in relation with the Supreme Lord, Hari, is knowledge resulting in the complete suspension of the waves and whirlpools of the material modes. Such knowledge is self-satisfying due to its being free from material attachment and being transcendental. It is approved by authorities. Who could fail to be attracted? So purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Purport. According to the Bhagavad Gita in the 10th chapter, text 9, the characteristics of pure devotees are wonderful. The complete functional activities of a pure devotee are always engaged in the service of the Lord, and thus the pure devotees exchange feelings of ecstasy between themselves and relish transcendental bliss. That's the verse this transcendental bliss is experienced even in the stage of devotional practice, sadhana, avastha, if properly undertaken under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. And in the mature stage, the developed transcendental feeling culminates in realization of a particular relationship with the Lord by which a living entity is originally constituted. There's that word, originally constituted again. Understand? That's sort of like defeats all the people who say that we came from the Brahmajyoti, or we came from the Tatashta Shakti, originally constituted, up to the relationship of conjugal love with the Lord, which is estimated to be the highest transcendental bliss. Thus, Bhakti Yoga, being the only means of God realization, is called Kaivalya. Srila Jiva Goswami quotes the Vedic version, Eko Narayano Deva Paravaranam Parama Aste Kaivalya Samgitaha. In this connection, it establishes that Narayan, the personality of Godhead, is known as Kaivalya. And the means which enables one to approach the Lord is called the Kaivalya Panta, or the only means of attainment of Godhead. This Kaivalya Panta begins from Shravana, or the hearing those topics that relate to the personality of Godhead, and the natural consequence of hearing such Harikatha is attainment of transcendental knowledge which causes detachment from all mundane topics, for which a devotee has no taste at all. For a devotee, all mundane activities, social and political, become unattractive. News. And in the mature state, such a devotee becomes uninterested even in his own body, and what to speak of bodily relatives. In such a state of affairs, one is not agitated by the waves of the material modes. There are different modes of material nature in all mundane functions in which a common man is very much interested or in which he takes part become unattractive for the devotee. This state of affairs is described here in as Patini Vritta Urnormi. And it is possible by Atma Prasada or complete self-satisfaction without any material connection. The first-class devotee of the Lord attains this stage by devotional service, but despite his loftiness, for the Lord's satisfaction he may play the voluntary part of a preacher of the Lord's glory, and dovetail all into devotional service, even mundane interest, just to give the neophytes a chance to transform mundane interest into transcendental bliss. Srila Rupa Goswami has described this action of a pure devotee as Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Uchate. Even mundane activities dovetailed with service to the Lord are also calculated to be transcendental or approved Kaivalya affairs. So again, the Sanskrit. Yanam yada pratinivritta gunormi chakramatma prasada utajatra guneshva sangha kaivalya sammatapatasvata bhakti yogava konirvito garikata survatimna kuryats. So, Om Gananatimidandasha Kananjana Shlakaya Chaksuram Meditam Yena Tasmai Shivadave Namaha. So, start the discussion. Transcendental knowledge. Okay, so transcendental knowledge, generally we consider transcendental knowledge to be of three types. Sambandha Gyan, Abhidaya Gyan, Prayojana Gyan. Everybody understands those three. Sambandha basically means the relationships of the different energies and the Lord and His expansions and all that other stuff. For example, we have the material energy, we have the spiritual energy, we have us, the Jiva soul, marginal potency of the Lord. We have, time, we have karma, and all these different factors, actually the 5 things that are described in the Bhagavad Gita. And there's more to Sambandha Gyan than that. I was listening to a class of Srila Prabhupada this morning. He was describing the different vigrahas, the Lord's vigraha, expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, aveshas, and portions of plenary portions. I mean, it was quite a complicated discussion Srila Prabhupada was making. In that Krishna has certain types of expansions, such as in the rasa dance, and other types of expansions, such as his Chaturvyuha expansions, Vasudeva, Samprashan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. And it was interesting, Prabhupada was talking about how all these different expansions, they're not like a yogi's expansions. Like the yogi's expansions, Prabhupada said, are like TV expansions. And Prabhupada gave the example of Shobhari Muni, who basically got a little lusty because he had committed an offense to Garuda. I think you all know that story, right? Shobhari Muni? No. Shobhari Muni was meditating in the Yamuna River, and he wanted to protect the fish from being eaten by Garuda. And so he cursed Garuda. And as a result, in spite of being a great yogi, meditating, etc. like that, he became lusty by seeing 2 fish engage in romantic affairs. I don't even know what that means. The Prophet described it. You ever seen fish engage in romantic affairs? I haven't. Anyway, so he jumped out of the water, and to make a long story short, he, I won't make it that short. He went to the king and asked for the king's daughter in marriage. The king had 50 daughters. And the king said, anybody who wants to marry you can marry you. And because he was so ugly at that point, having meditated in the water for so many years, the king thought that this was a trick. Nobody's going to want to marry him. He was completely waterlogged. Then he transformed himself into a young man, and then he married all 50 girls. Anyway, and it's described that he had all these different expansions there. And his expansions were like television expansions. In other words, it wasn't like Krishna in Dwarka, where Krishna was doing something different with each and every wife. With one wife, one family, he was playing with the kids. Another one, he was eating dinner, etc. When Narada Muni went to visit Krishna in Dwarka. So that's a little bit different. So anyway, so this is all part of Sambandha Gyan. In other words, understanding the Lord, understanding the Lord's energies, basically. That's it. The Lord and the Lord's energies. And time is one of the Lord's energies. material world is one of the Lord's energies. We're one of the Lord's energies. The internal potency is one of the Lord's energies. So many energies. Parashara Shakti, Vidaiva Shriyate, Svabhavati, Jnana, Bala, Yacha. Oh, incidentally, there's a very interesting thing about the Lord's energies. That in the Brahma Samhita, it describes that at the time of creation, when there was only the Pradhan, the Lord glanced at the Pradhan, which is the unmanifest stage of the three modes of material nature, and he implanted within the Pradhan the time factor as well as the living entities. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is this is very much in tune with what the scientists believe as far as the Big Bang. Big Bang? The scientists say that before the Big Bang there was no time. And we say the same thing. It's Krishna plan, the time factor. Anyway, so that's Sambandha Gyan. And then apart from Sambandha Gyan is Abhideya Gyan. Abhideya means, what do you do about the knowledge that you got with Sambandha Gyan? You know, now that you know about the Lord, His energies, reincarnation, karma, time, the material world, spiritual world, what do you do about it? Well, basically you should want to get the hell out of it, out of the material world. And Abhideya means how the process of getting out of the material world, such as sadhana bhakti, which means basically chanting, for us it means chanting our rounds, rising early, worshipping Tulsi Devi, worshipping the deities, chanting the holy names, living in the holy place, reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, the 5 different important factors mentioned in that through devotion. And that's Abhideya, the process of Abhideya. And of course it entails, it gets more complicated, Vaidhi Bhakti, Raganuga Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, and Prema Bhakti. And right now, most of us are doing Vaidhi Bhakti, right? Any Prema Bhaktis here? Raganuga Bhaktis? Any? No. Anyway, even if you were, you wouldn't say it. So if you do say, that means you're probably not very advanced. You say, I'm a Raganuga Bhakta. I was talking to one devotee once who wasn't so strict in his sadhana. And I said, hey, good idea if you got some strictness in your sadhana. And he said, isn't there any place in the Hare Krishna movement for spontaneous devotional service? And I said, yes, there's a place, but according to Srila Rupa Goswami, if someone is on the platform of Raganuga Bhakti, he will act externally as a Vaidhi Bhakta. Why? Yajnacharya Shrestha does, to set a good example, and also, guess what? He's humble. Someone is not going to say, I'm a spontaneous devotee. Anyway, so that's Abhideya, and then Prayojana. Prayojana means like what happens in the spiritual world. 10th canto, a lot of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is this Prayojana Gyan. So, these 3 types of knowledge. In addition, Prabhupada says at the end of purport that even mundane activities dovetailed with the service of the Lord are calculated to be transcendental or approved Kaivalya affairs, which is actually a very interesting statement. And Prabhupada previously makes reference to this verse about Yukta Vairagya, Nirvanda Krishna Sambandha Yukta Vairagya Mujjate, that one should understand how to utilize the material energy in Krishna's service, and by utilizing the material energy in Krishna's service under the direction of a pure devotee, that's spiritual. Or as Prabhupada said, using the example of an electrician who can transform electricity into either heating or cooling, that the Lord transforms the material energies. You know, what is apparently mundane becomes transformed by engagement in devotional service. Another example Prabhupada gave was an iron rod being put into a fire, becomes hotter, and eventually it becomes, or acts as fire. So, therefore, activities in Krishna's service, let's say if we're talking about someone doing construction, and talking about how to construct a temple, or like you're trying to construct this part of the pavilion here, that's transcendental. It's not mundane. Or, as Prabhupada instructed many of these scientifically inclined devotees to look into this whole subject matter of life comes from life, and then they have to study mathematics, microbiology, and all those other things, which appears to be very mundane. Then it becomes spiritualized or spiritual by being engaged in Krishna service. So that's also transcendental topics. So that's transcendental knowledge. In other words, topics about Krishna, topics about how to get out of the material world, avidya, topics about the spiritual world, topics about how to serve Krishna. Another topic is Krishna's pure devotees' pastimes. Like we have so many books about Srila Prabhupada's activities while he was here with us. Unfortunately, nowadays, as I go around the world, I find that most of the devotees haven't even read the Prabhupada Leelamrita. It's very unfortunate. And so, we're talking about keeping Prabhupada in the center. But in order to keep Prabhupada in the center, one has to understand Prabhupada. Just like Prabhupada said, in order to love God, you have to know God. In order to love Prabhupada and focus your mind on Prabhupada's mission, you have to know Prabhupada. So there should be a system everywhere for devotees to read. Of course, whenever a new biography comes out, I devour it. That's an interesting word, devour. I jump on it or whatever, and I read it. So devotees should be very enthusiastic. So that's another type of Krishna Katha. All these are different types of Krishna Katha, by which one becomes, let's say, as described here, in the situation of complete suspension of the waves and whirlpools of the material modes. Another interesting verse in the Gita in this regard, insofar as Yukta Vairagya is Sanskrit. The English is by making a full contribution to Brahman, the person making the offering, the offering itself, the result of the offering become transformed into Brahman. Here it is. Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavya, Brahmagno, Brahmano Utam, Brahmatena Gantavyam, Brahma Karma Samadhi. So one is absorbed even in serving Krishna, that's absorption in Krishna. And the symptom of that, the result of that, is that one becomes detached. Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojata. Janayati Asu Vairagyam Gyanam Chaya Ahaitakam. One becomes detached from this material world. So one is not becoming, and also not becoming detached from the material world, and not developing a taste for Vasudeva Katha Ruchi, for Krishna consciousness. Then the Bhagavatam says that one is simply doing something wrong, in other words, wasting one's time. So anyway, so this is actually the test of whether we're actually engaged in cultivating transcendental knowledge of the various types, that we become detached from this material world. Detached means detached from the anarthas, like lust, anger, greed, illusion, envy, attachment, and also get a taste for hearing and chanting about Krishna. So, anything else I want to say about this? Such knowledge is self-satisfying due to being freed from material attachment and being transcendental as approved by authorities. So this is the method of becoming detached from this world, rather than being negative about this world. In other words, that's that would be like Sankhya Yoga or the impersonalists who have some negative attitude towards this world, or even immature devotees who simply consider everything to be Maya or illusion. I remember in the early days of the movement, the brahmacharis would consider all the ladies to be Maya babies, and they would blame the ladies for their attachment to them. Yeah. And they said, I got victimized. But actually, it's not the lady's fault, it's not the sense object's fault that you're attached to the sense object. It's your fault that you're not enough attached to Krishna. So, any questions or comments about any of these points? Questions, comments? Are you this? Yes.
Is Karma Yoga synonymous with Yukti Vairagya?
Is what yoga?
Karma Yoga.
Karma yoga is interesting. Karma yoga basically, technically, means to work for Krishna, connect yourself with Krishna by working for him. Karma yoga is contained within bhakti yoga. However, if you're a karma yogi, you can be a karma yogi without a bhakti yoga, without being a bhakti yogi. You understand? But if you're a bhakti yogi, you're automatically a karma yogi at the same time. You're doing karma yoga, and you're not a karma yogi, you're doing karma yoga. So, and actually Krishna, in the 12th chapter of the Gita, he talks about this. Let me read this. 12th chapter of the Gita, he talks about the difference. Beginning of the 12th chapter of the Gita. After he blasts the impersonalists. First of all, he says, be a bhakti yogi. In the 8th text, he says, fix your mind upon me, thus you will live in me always. And then, that's for pure devotees. And if you can't do that, next verse, text 9. If you can't do that, follow bhakti yoga. Next verse, text 10. He says, if you can't practice bhakti yoga, then just try to work for me. Because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. So that's karma yoga without bhakti yoga in text 10. Text 9, the previous text, which says, follow the regular principles of bhakti yoga, that's bhakti yoga, which automatically includes karma yoga. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
So if you're dealing with sets and subsets, then if you have this big Venn diagram, if you have bhakti yoga, automatically you have karma yoga inside it. But if you have karma yoga, you may or may not have bhakti yoga. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? Yes?
Can you repeat that sentence, the purport where Prabhupada used the word constituted or constitutional?
Ready?
And explain the emphasis on that, please.
Try to explain that. Where's that purport?
Originally constituted.
It's in the first paragraph.
The first paragraph, right?
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
In the mature stage, developed transcendental.
Oh, and in the mature stage, the developed transcendental feeling culminates in realization of a particular relationship with the Lord, by which a living entity is originally constituted. That means that's his original constitution. Constitution means nature.
Okay, does that mean the original rasa or sarup, the eternal relationship we have with Krishna and the 5 different rasas, is already there constitutionally?
Yes, it's there
or do we have to develop that?
No, it's there constitutionally. We have to realize it. Prabhupada said, gave the example that when one performs devotional service, it's like waking up in the morning. In other words, by the sound vibration, if you have an alarm clock, or nowadays alarm mobile phone, by the sound vibration, you're woken up. And some of us, not me, but some of us take a while to remember who we are when we get up in the morning. Anyone's had that experience? And you get up in the morning. Well, at least remember where you are.
Yeah, that one I have a lot.
Okay, forget about who you are. Let's say about where you are. And especially, for me, the where you are is a big thing. Because I have to be careful of getting off the wrong side of the bed in the morning. Because sometimes, when I wake up in the morning, I hit the wall because the last bed I was in, the wall wasn't there. And so it takes a while to realize, especially here it can be dangerous because the bed they give me is quite high. And I'm not used to a bed that high. So I have to remember, as soon as the alarm rings, don't jump off the bed. Because where I stay in North Carolina, we have the bed basically on the floor. It's almost like a futon with mattress, but real close to the floor. So therefore, it takes some time to remember in the morning. And the transcendental sound wakes one up so that they remember gradually who they are. And Krishna in the Gita gives the examples like when the sun comes up in the morning, then everything becomes revealed.
So that constitution cannot be changed. It's in.
Well, I don't want to say cannot be changed.
Okay. Because
Like technically, Prabhupada did say one time that if one wants to change their rust, they can do it. But that's generally not done. But we have this constitutional nature. In other words, you, Vijaya, are either a gopi, it's hard to understand, or a coward boy, or one of the mothers of Krishna, or let's say or a servant of Krishna, or just a passive worshiper of Krishna. And it's there. It's a question of realizing it. Now, we do not ascribe to the process of Siddha Pranali in our Krishna consciousness movement. Siddha Pranali would mean that I would come to you, let's say if I was your rasa guru, I would say, someone would say to you, Vishaya, that the reason you haven't realized your rasa is you haven't accepted the rasa guru yet. Actually, there people do propaganda like that to try to convince people to leave ISKCON. I was reading one book where they were talking about Prabhupada's rasa, and they said that Prabhupada was, anyway, I'm not going to get into this, it was a particular rasa, and if you want to have a different rasa, you really need to approach someone different. It was written by an ex-ISKCON devotee. I mean, that was the import of the whole thing. That, you really, I don't want to get into details because I was so upset by reading this book. I read it because I have to be aware of these things, to counter these things. I'm not suggesting that everyone should read them, but that's my service. I have to be aware. So, anyway, first of all, one shouldn't even speculate about the rest of the spiritual master. Prabhupada would often say if someone asks him a question like that question you do not need to ask. That's a polite way of saying, it's none of your business, buddy. Prabhupada is more polite. So, anyway, there's this process of Siddha Pranali, which was done in the past by pure devotees. And it's mentioned by Bhaktivinoda Thakur in some of his works, like the Jaiva Dharma, where the spiritual master, the Rasa Guru, let's say if I was your Rasa, let's go back to that example, hypothetically. Let's say if I was Pushaya's Rasa Guru, and I would say, Pushaya, looking at you, at your soul, I can see that you're a gopi. And I would give you something called a Kadasa Bhava. That means Bhava means the 11 aspects of your personality. I would say, you dress in a yellow sari, you're a follower of Sudevi, one of the Astasakis. I'm not saying, don't take this literally, Bushaya. It's just, I want to see you tomorrow in a yellow sari. I mean, you'll be literally controversial. It's not just a little controversial, not much. So, and then I give you all these 11 aspects of your personality. What you do, you cook sweet rice for the divine couple, and you wake them up in the morning, and your parents' name is such and such, and you go up and down. All right, so what would you do with that information if I told you?
It wouldn't be relevant right now.
No, it wouldn't be relevant. And it's not our process, this process. It's called Siddha Pranali. And particularly the Babajis in Radhakund and Vrindavan, not all of them, embark or they do this process and they attract people. Because obviously, it's a lot easier than getting up every morning going to Mangalarti and just struggling with the six senses, just as they want. I'm a gopi. And then, of course, when you start to think like that, not you, but when someone starts to think about it like that and they're not qualified, then they just project their own mundane inebrities or desires upon the transcendental realm, and it just spoils everything. Of course, that's called sahaja. So our process, according to His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, is deserve and desire. That's our process. And we have faith, I have faith, that when Srila Prabhupada wants, Srila Prabhupada will reveal whatever our constitutional nature is, and Krishna will reveal in the heart, somehow or other. It'll be figured out. And also, our process for becoming Krishna conscious is to please Srila Prabhupada. It's a very easy process. We don't have to get into all these complicated things. Yasha prasada bhagavad prasada yasa prasada na kati katopi. If we please Prabhupada, then we'll get all perfection, isn't it? It's very easy. I don't have to worry. At this point in my devotional service, I don't worry whether I'm a gopi, a coward boy, or a rock, or a monkey. Lord Ram's pastime. That's kind of interesting. 16 Hanuman, I'd like to do that. So I don't worry about those things. I just think I would like to please Prabhupada. That's my focus in my life, to please Prabhupada. As far as going back to Godhead, whatever, if we please Prabhupada, that is already back to Godhead. Isn't it? And it's already back to Godhead. If you're just concentrating on pleasing Prabhupada and carrying out his mission and tolerating all the things that occur in the process of your working in his mission, that's a big thing. I can't tell you how many things you have to tolerate. Then if you do that, then Prabhupada would be pleased. Prabhupada, one time said, I think it was to Ambrish or to Jagataka Maharaj, that if you build this temple in Mayapur, Bhakti Vinod Thakur will personally come and take you by hand back to Godhead. That's our method. Actually, in the previous verse, I believe it's the previous verse here, in the Bhagavatam, it's actually no, that's not demigods. Is it? There's a verse here. Oh, yeah, that is the previous verse. All the different kinds of worshippers, multi-demigods, can attain the highest perfection of benediction, which is spontaneous attraction, implicitly fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead only by the association of the pure devotee of the Lord. That's the previous verse. Now, what does it mean, the association? Does it mean like physically being present and just grabbing the dust from his feet? Of course, that's nice too. These are powerful substances. The dust of the feet of the pure devotee, the foot bathed in water, the prasadam remnants of the pure devotee. Yes, that's true too. But by pleasing the pure devotee, understanding what the pure devotee wants and pleasing him or her, their pure devotee ladies too, then all perfection is there. Right? To me, that's That's how, I to be honest, I'm not that much interested in realizing my spiritual identity. I guess I should reveal my mind. I'm just interested in pleasing Prabhupada. To me, I would just like to be able to serve Prabhupada life after life. I mean, if Krishna can give me that blessing, that's all I really, right now at least, aspire for. And then when Krishna wants to reveal things, that's up to him. Isn't it? Vedami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te tesham satati yuktanam vajatam pratipurvaka Vedami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. You know, I will give, Krishna says, I'll give the intelligence to those who worship me with devotion. Personally, I can't say that I have any devotion. But at least I can say that I have devotion for Prabhupada. And so, and then Prabhupada is accepted. It's like when we do arti, we approach the deities through the spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It's not that I go directly to Krishna. Hey, Krishna, here I am. Mm-hmm. Aren't you fortunate to see me here, Krishna? No, it's Prabhupada, and then Prabhupada does the offering. That's my realization. Yes?
Yeah, along those lines, there was, to support what you were saying, that there was a letter Srila Prabhupada wrote, and it was probably around 1972, and he was referring to, he said, we will have our ISKCON in the spiritual sky.
Yeah.
I will be there, Shamsundar will be there, this one will be there, everyone will be there except for Mr. Nair. You know,
Yeah, probably.
So, you know, and I kind of meditated on this point that there's and he also says that there's an ISKCON, there'll be an ISKCON in the spiritual sky, he's saying. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that we have an eternal relationship. Now, that can mean also, though, that we're being sent out, helping Prabhupada, like that. And again, in terms of this idea of spontaneous service, I've been meditating on this a lot, is that, you know, generally when people say that, it's like you said, that I reached the level where I can chant or not chant, I do it when, because I'm now spontaneous.
Yeah.
But in a more practical way, I've realized in the sense it's kind of just recently the penny dropped of whatever that means, but you know, say you have a service that requires you to set up the bathing trays, mm-hmm. and then you notice that something else that's not your service hasn't been done, mm-hmm. and then you just do it without being told to do it, mm-hmm. you just do it, mm-hmm. without complaining that someone else didn't do it, you do it. And so to me, that means not that I don't, you know, you're like you're more advanced or something, but that is a spontaneous form of service.
Right.
So it's not a very complicated thing. It's not meaning that you have to all of a sudden achieve some level where you've graduated from the day-to-day routine. Mm. But you're in the day-to-day routine and you're increasing your service, even if you're unasked.
That's nice. Prabhupada also said that if we see something that's wrong and we don't act on it, and we have the capacity to act on it, we're actually in ignorance. Mm-hmm. Like if you see something that, let's say you're doing something in the pujaari room, and you see something on the floor that's not your service, and you just say, well, it's not my service. Or you're walking around the dom here, and you see garbage on the floor, and you say, well, I'm not supposed to be the garbage man picking it up. Mm-hmm. Then you're actually in ignorance. Right. Or just as responsible. There's actually a technical definition for spontaneous devotional service. What you're saying is actually true, that you see something and you do it, that's spontaneous devotional service. But there's also a technical definition for Raganuga Bhakti, which is the second stage of sadhana bhakti. And in that particular stage of Raganuga Bhakti, you actually have some realization about your spiritual identity, and you follow in the footsteps of some particular eternal resident of Vrindavan. This is a nectar devotion.
Yeah.
my point was that even if one is on that particular level, let's say I was following in the footsteps of Kamsa, sorry. Probably I'm doing that. Or, following in the footsteps of, let's say, Subal, one of the coward boys. Then, basically, I would take on that mood and serve in that mood, but that would always be eternal. It wouldn't be something that I would let anyone know. And at the same time, I would act as a sadhaka, Vaidhi Bhakti, following the principles of Vaidhi Bhakti, because I would be humble. I'm just being hypothetical here. Because I would be humble thinking that, like Prabhupada said, that you Western boys and girls are not enough afraid of Maya. I'd be humble because you can fall down. Up to the stage of bhava, you can fall down. Look at Bharat Maharaj. He was on the platform of bhava. He fell down from devotional service. At least, he didn't lose his devotional service, but he actually did fall down because he wasn't attentive. According to Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, up to the stage of bhava, even though you have no more anarthas, you're not absolutely free from anarthas. They can come back if you're inattentive. Even though there's none there, they may come back.
Who's the one who broke those house? What's the...
Abhil Mangal Thakur.
Now he was experiencing...
He was on bhava too. He was on bhava too. And, that was a heavy story. I heard Prabhupada tell that the day before yesterday, because I listen to Prabhupada's classes every morning. And Prabhupada told the story in such a heavy way that, he asked for the hairpins of this lady and then poked his eyes out.
He has to go in the back room.
Yeah. Well, he said to the man, he said, I'd like to be alone with your wife.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada actually said, I want to enjoy your wife in this particular
Wow.
In this particular narration. I said, oh my God, what is the guy thinking when some man comes, doesn't want to do it? But the Prabhupada said, because Bilba Mangal was a Brahmin, and there was the culture of respecting the request of a Brahmin. And then he said, it's interesting, Prabhupada said, then he said, Mataji, please give me your hairpins, and put out his eyes.
Is he the same one who climbs the wall and you realize...
Yeah, that's a story. That's a wonderful story. And devotees used to put that play on.
Yeah. The Mongol used to do it.
Yeah, he used to put the play on. He climbed the wall, and there was a snake on the wall. He grabbed hold of a dead body or a crocodile while crossing the river. And Chintamani, that is, his guru spoke through the lips of Chintamani, who was a prostitute. His girlfriend, basically. And she said, if you were as much attached to Krishna as you are to me, his dead body, Prabhupada said, then you'd be pure devotee. And he left.
And always remember her.
What?
And always remembered her as his first guru.
Yeah, he paid respects to her. His actual guru, I think, was called Somagiri, if I remember correctly. And she was Chintamani. And he wrote the most elevated books, such as the Krishna Karnamrita, which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu very much appreciated.
How could he write when he was blind?
Usually they would dictate.
Krishnadas Kaviraj.
Well, Krishnadas Kaviraj, he was not completely blind. His hand was shaking. He describes his hand was shaking. He was almost blind. But obviously he had someone, he didn't use a mobile phone to record. Obviously he had someone do it. He couldn't have written being completely blind. Anyway, that's my speculation, but it's, it's an obvious point. Someone else must have written it. So, any other questions or comments? Anyone want to find out their spiritual identity? Anyway, it's an allurement that many people succumb to. That, when they go to Vrindavan, or that's why Prabhupada said that people, at least newer devotees, when they go to the Holy Dham, should be accompanied by older devotees. who can protect them. Yes?
Maharaj, you were saying just a little while ago about tolerating, like all of the devotees should not tolerate these things. At what point do you draw the line and not tolerate things?
That's a good question. I mean, obviously, we don't want to be subjected to abuse, either physical, mental, psychological abuse. We should make some adjustment to protect ourselves from these things. But at the same time, when one takes up a service for Krishna, what we've seen because of the nectarian aspects of the internet, then one will be subjected to quite a bit of criticism. And as we used to chant when I was a demon, sticks and stones will break my bones. What's the rest of it?
But
Names will never hurt me. Because we can always just take shelter of Krishna's names. I mean, ultimately, when things go wrong, we can think like Dharma the Bull did in relationship to the personality of Kali. He didn't blame Kali for what was happening to him. Remember the story?
Yeah.
He actually understood it was the Lord's plan. And Krishna in the 6th chapter of the Gita says, Yomam pashati sarvatra, sarvam chamai pashati, tashaham navtanashyami, sachame pranashati. Anyone know that verse? I'll give you the translation. It's a very important verse, one of the really important verses of the Gita, 6:30.
Is it about identifying the perpetrator?
No, he says, one who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me is never lost to me, nor am I ever lost to him. This, to me, it's really one of the nutshell. I know it's not the nutshell verse of the Gita, but to me it's one of the nutshell verses of the Gita. To always see Krishna in everything and everywhere. So if someone, let's say, does something or says something that may be painful to me, I have to see Krishna's done it. I didn't do it. I have no control over these things. And why did Krishna do it? Number 2. Number 3, what am I supposed to do about it? And so it doesn't mean I stand around and just get attacked. Sometimes you got to defend yourself. Obviously, we're not advocates of absolute nonviolence. Like Prabhupada commented when Mahatma Gandhi said that even if his own daughter was attacked, he would just stand there. Prabhupada said that's nonsense. So obviously we can defend ourselves, but we have to not blame the perpetrator, and that's a hard thing. That's really hard. If someone does something to us, understand that ultimately Krishna's not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Supreme Personality of God. What's the reason it happened? That's a hard one. And that's what Dharma the Bull pointed out when he was asked by Parikshit Maharaj, who has done this to you? And Dharma the Bull basically indicated that it was Krishna's plan. He didn't say, that's Kali there. Kill that creep. Wipe him out. And it's a heavy story. So any other questions or comments? Or problems or issues? Or anyone want to know their spiritual identity? It's free today. No charge.
That's called the Siddha Deha.
The Siddha Deha means your spiritual identity. Siddha Pranali means given the Rasa Guru will tell you who you are and what you do in the spiritual world and what you look like. That's called Siddha Pranali. That was a bona fide process for pure devotees. Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about that in the Jaiva Dharma. That is not the process given to us by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, nor by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada's process, just to reiterate, is to deserve and desire. I mean, at the same time, we're reading the Vaishnava literature, we're cultivating, doing sadhana and everything like that. But when it's time, we'll understand what our spiritual identity is. I mean, we have groups of devotees nowadays go on the internet and just talk about their rasas with Krishna. It's just not something that Prabhupada really wanted, it's something internal. I mean, sure, if you've realized and you have some friend there, you can discuss it back and forth, dadati prajagranati, guyam akyati prichati, that's fine. But to go on the internet.
My memory is in the Nectar Devotion, Prabhupada said that at some point, it may be, while still in this body, someone from Gokula will approach you and begin to train you in some way.
Yeah, well, one gets trained. This is an internal thing.
Yeah.
One gets trained. It's not that I will make followers by going to you and saying, I've been sent by Prabhupada. Or I can tell you everything that you want to know, but you're afraid to ask, and Prabhupada never told you. That's basically one of the strategies of some groups outside ISKCON. Prabhupada, like I was hinting at before, Prabhupada was a particular ras. If you want to be on a higher ras, then you really need to approach a different Shiksha group. And guess what? That's me. And so there's a lot of political machinations behind machination. Look that word up later, you'll understand what I mean.
Yeah. Because actually, if you read the story of Krishna, and the way that all transpired with his Diksha Guru and Jiva Goswami and how it was handled, it's much more polite and philosophical, and there's no attempt by the Shiksha Guru to, and actually Jiva Goswami wasn't actually even involved. It was Lalita. Yeah, it was Lalita involved.
And his Diksha Guru beat him up. You know that story?
I didn't know that part, no.
Yeah, Hridaya Chaitanya, his Diksha Guru, actually beat him up because he had a different rasa than the Diksha Guru. And then Hridaya Chaitanya had a dream that night, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, you know that story? Lord Chaitanya was bloody. And he said, why have you beaten up? I took,
Wasn't it because at first he just thought Shamananda had rebelled and gone to a different material group?
Yeah.
And so he started beating him, but then he understood that it was from
well, basically he said Shamananda is unchaste.
Yeah.
Because he is in a different bhav than his guru. Yeah, that's part of the story.
Oh, I'm staying with the initial reaction. Later on, so it's even deeper than that.
Yeah, you get deeper. The initial reaction is he thought he got reinitiated by someone else. Then Shaimananda explained that actually I had a dream, Guru Maharaj, and you gave me this name. And then Guru Maharaj, that's Hridaya Chaitanya, said, those dreams are nonsense. I was not in that dream. Sometimes you find disciples who say they have a dream, Guru Maharaj, you told me to do this, and I said, that wasn't me. That was Maya Guru. So then Guru Maharaj, that is Hridaya Chaitanya, went, it's a complicated story, he went to Vrindavan to confront Shaimananda. And he said, if you're actually Shaimananda, then we're going to do a test. And that test will be that you have the name Shaimananda written on you. I'm going to wipe it off. And if it reappears, anyone remember that story now? Yeah. If it reappears, then we know it's your bona fide name, and you actually got it from Lalita. And so, at that point, Shaimananda went into meditation. He chanted a mantra that Lalita gave him, that he could enter into Radhakrishna's pastimes at any point. So he chanted that, and he went to see Radharani. He was crying. He said, my husband is Swami, because Swami means husband and also means master, and also means guru, has actually beaten me. What should I do? And then Subal This is such an interesting story. Who was Hridaya Chaitanya's spiritual master as Gauridas Pandit. You ever been following what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I knew all these things.
Yeah. Who was actually the spiritual master of Shaimananda's spiritual master, or Hridaya Chaitanya's spiritual master, same thing. He wrote the name Shaimananda on the chest. And so she, because she's in a female form now, goes back to external consciousness, let's say material world stuff, and the guru wipes off the name and the name reappears. A few days later he gets angry and beats his disciple up.
Where's the story? Because that's not how I remember reading it.
Does anyone remember that part of the story? Yeah, that's the full story. You could look it up. He actually hits Shaimananda. Then he has a dream, and Lord Chaitanya chastises him in that dream for beating his disciple up. And then Lord Chaitanya gives him a punishment of having something like 12 festivals. He has to sponsor 12 festivals. And then they live happily ever after. Look up the story. That's the whole story.
Which book is it in?
It's in several different books. The Narottama Vilas. It's in the Bhakti Ratnakara. It's in the standard biographies of Shyamananda. And also, one of my godbrothers wrote that in his biography of Shyamananda. Satyaraj. Yeah, Satyaraj.
He wrote each of the Goswamis and also Narottama
Shyamananda Srinivas.
But he doesn't mention that part in his telling. At least the one I saw didn't say that last part. At least I don't remember it.
I think that was in his book too. That's
I
it.
remember him beating Shyamananda and then having a dream.
Yeah.
Huh.
So that's it. That's in the book. Yeah. It's a complicated story. I mean, somehow or other, I remember all this stuff. Yes.
Maharaj, I think I may be confused, but I believe I read somewhere that maybe last year you participated in probably was a seminar, a conference about the succession in ISKCON, something involved the second generation. Maybe
Yeah.
There was a conference in Europe or somewhere. Can you share some?
I didn't participate in that, no. I didn't participate in any conference in Europe last year. But in the GBC, we were talking about succession. But I wasn't at that conference. Yes, we have to have succession. Actually, we're hoping to have some next generation, maybe third generation, devotees on the management team here. We're going to be talking about that today. It's not second generation anymore, it's third generation. You may even have some fourth generation people. Yeah?
Just after our succession festival, last Thanksgiving weekend, I just heard some of those younger devotees expressing that they felt some pressure, I guess you'd say, to become initiated, and unless they were initiated, I mean, they should feel some pressure, but unless they were initiated, they didn't really have a place in any kind of, succession paradigm.
Well, yeah, I don't think initiation should be a requirement for, I mean, at least being part of advisory boards or councils or things like that. Initiation is a requirement for legal representation of ISKCON. That's always been Prabhupada's move. But as far as being on management boards or advisory boards, I don't think that's initiation is required. Nobody should be pressured to take initiation. I mean, Prabhupada took 11 years after meeting his guru before he took initiation. So when it's, initiation has to be something when someone's ready to make a promise and understanding the person who's taking initiation from. Disciple tests the spiritual master tests the disciple.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you talk about succession, second generation, it seems like they usually talk about like born in the movement, born of devotees, but there's another second generation.
Yeah, that's, I was referring in general to all the second generation. All the second generation.
When we had a meeting for second generation here for succession, if you're over 50 to that, you don't fit in the succession anymore, even if you're in the second generation. We weren't included.
Oh, so we should include second generation over 50.
We were looking for younger people, that's why we said we had a cutoff point of 50 years, you know.
But we're not fully engaged in succession yet, even if we're over 50, we could still do so.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's room for people over 50, there's room for people over 70. Like me, you know. This is my 70th year, well. Not 70th year in ISKCON, 70th year. I can't even say 70th year in this body because the body's always changing. There's a 70th year, I don't know, since whenever.
This material empty.
Since, I can't say I was born because the soul's not born. How do you say it?
Appearance.
In this appearance.
Appearance?
Yeah.
No, but I appear every day. I sleep and I go. Anyway, whatever. Okay, on that happy note, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Namah Shivaya Krishna.